The phone went quiet before I could even say goodbye. 1 second, my mother's voice was still there, smooth and practiced. And the next, there was only the low hum of the garage filling the space where she'd been. I stood frozen, my phone still pressed to my ear, grease smeared across the back of my hand, the smell of oil and cold metal heavy in the air. "Your sister wants her boyfriend to make a good first impression," she had said. "And having you there would make her look bad. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, bad. Like I was something that could stain a photo if placed too close to the frame." I lowered the phone slowly and stared at the concrete floor. It was cracked in 3 places. A thin spiderweb of old damage I'd never bothered to fix because it didn't affect how the place worked. For some reason, that felt important in that moment. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't remind her that Thanksgiving had always been at their house, that I'd never missed one, that I'd rearranged work schedules and slept in my truck more than once just to make it. I just stood there, listening to the faint ticking of cooling metal from the engine in front of me, like the garage itself was breathing after holding too much inside. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. My name is Rowan Hale. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a mechanic. The kind who works with her hands until they ache. Who can tell what's wrong with an engine by the sound it makes when it turns over? Who knows that some problems aren't loud when they start, just persistent? People are often surprised by how I look when they meet me. Long hair I usually keep braided or tied back. A face that stays softer than my job suggests, no matter how much dirt or grease ends up on it. I've heard it my whole life. "You don't look like a mechanic." My family used to say it too, like it explained something about me they couldn't quite place. In our house growing up, appearances were currency. My mother curated our family the way some people curate social media profiles. Everything polished, everything intentional. Smiles practiced in mirrors before events. Outfits chosen to say the right things without speaking. And standing next to my younger sister Lena, I was always the wrong accessory. Lena shined effortlessly. She didn't just walk into rooms, she arrived. Soft curls, perfect posture, a voice that knew exactly when to soften and when to sparkle. She worked in marketing, a job my parents loved to talk about because it sounded impressive without needing explanation. My father leaned into it. To him, Lena was something to brag about, proof that the family image was intact. Me, I was useful. That was the word he used most often, usually with a nod, like it was supposed to be a compliment. "You're handy," he'd say. "Good thing we've got you." When the sink leaked, I fixed it. When Lena dented her car, I drove across town at midnight. When my parents forgot to pay a bill, I stepped in before penalties hit. I didn't complain. I learned early that challenging the family narrative only made things worse, so I stayed quiet, reliable, the one who handled it. By the time I realized how much I was giving, I'd already emptied myself doing it. The garage became the only place that felt like mine. Concrete floors, the smell of oil and metal, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Engines didn't care how I looked or how I compared to Lena. They didn't ask me to soften my edges or hide what I was good at. They just responded to attention and effort. So when my mother uninvited me from Thanksgiving, it wasn't a shock. It still hurt. A deep, pulsing hurt that settled behind my ribs and stayed there, quiet and insistent. But it wasn't new. She used that same careful tone she always used before saying something cruel. Calm, reasonable. As if what she was doing made perfect sense, and any reaction I had would be the problem. "Lena's under a lot of pressure," she'd said. "This is important for her future." I stared at my phone long after the call ended. The shop lights buzzed faintly above me, flickering over the hood of a truck I'd been fixing for one of my regulars. Outside, winter pressed against the garage doors, sharp and impatient. I realized then that my family could cut me out of a holiday meant to be about gratitude without hesitation. And something inside me clicked into place. Not anger, not yet, but clarity. The kind that comes when a bolt finally tightens after being loose for years. I cleaned my tools, I locked the garage. I went home alone. And for the first time in my life, I wondered what it would look like to build something that didn't include them at all. The next morning, someone pounded on my front door hard enough to rattle the frame. I was still half asleep, hair loose around my shoulders, wearing an old t-shirt and pajama pants when I opened it. Cold air rushed in, biting at my skin, and there they were, all of them, My mother, my father, Lena, and the boyfriend. Their faces were red from the cold and from something else. Anger, sharp and ready. My mother didn't even say hello. "Why did you tell people you weren't invited?" she snapped. I blinked, still catching up. I didn't. Her eyes narrowed. "You must have. Your grandmother called us asking what happened. Do you know how humiliating that was?" Humiliating. The same word she'd used to describe me possibly ruining Lena's perfect first impression. My father stepped forward, shaking his head like I was a problem he thought he'd already solved years ago. "You always twist things, Rowan. Always making us look like the bad guys." Lena crossed her arms, wrapped in a cream-colored coat that looked like it had never known dirt. Her eyes swept over me, from my bare feet to my tangled hair, like my existence was an inconvenience. "It's honestly unbelievable you're doing this," she said. "You know how much pressure I'm under." Pressure. The word almost escaped me as a laugh, but then her boyfriend stepped forward. He hadn't said a word yet. He stood slightly behind them, hands in his pockets, watching, not furious, not smug, curious. My mother continued, voice tight. "You should have just accepted it. Lena's trying to build a certain image. Her career depends on it." My father nodded. "It's not wrong to ask you to stay home 1 year," Lena added. "It's literally not a big deal." They kept talking, stacking excuses on top of each other like bricks, building a wall I'd spent my whole life pressed against. My silence only made them louder. Finally, my mother asked, "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Before I could answer, the boyfriend spoke. "Hold on," he said slowly, looking at me more closely now. "Wait, Rowan Hale?" The porch went still. Lena turned sharply. "What are you doing?" He didn't look at her. He stepped closer, his expression changing into something like recognition. "You're the Rowan Hale who rebuilt that old Firebird," he said. "The matte black one. People were posting about it everywhere." My breath caught. Not because he recognized me, but because my family didn't. Lena's mouth fell open. "What? No, she just fixes cars." He shook his head. "No, she builds them, restores them. I followed her work for months." My father scoffed. "You're joking." My mother frowned, thrown off script. Lena flushed, color rising fast. The boyfriend, Evan, I remembered suddenly, looked at me with something like respect. "Your work is incredible." And just like that, the family hierarchy cracked. The perfect image wobbled. The script slipped. And for the first time, someone in their world was looking at me like I mattered. They hated it. For a long second after Evan spoke, no one moved. The cold hung between us, sharp and metallic, like the air before a storm breaks. My mother's mouth opened, then closed again. My father shifted his weight, clearly irritated that something unscripted had just happened on his porch. Lena's face tightened, her expression scrambling to recover the control she'd lost in a single sentence. "That's not relevant," my mother said finally, her tone clipped. "We're not here to talk about hobbies." "Hobbies?" Evan frowned. "Restoring classic cars isn't a hobby, it's a craft." Lena shot him a look so sharp it could have cut glass. "Evan, stop. You're embarrassing me." He glanced at her, genuinely confused. "I'm not trying to." My father stepped forward, clearly eager to reclaim the conversation. "Look, this is getting off track. We came here to clear the air." "No," my mother corrected smoothly. "We came here to fix what you started." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed loosely, more out of habit than defiance. "What exactly did I start?" She exhaled sharply, like she was tired of explaining something obvious to a child. "You made us look heartless. Your grandmother calling, asking why you weren't coming to Thanksgiving. Do you know what that did to us?" "To you," I said. My father frowned. "Don't twist things." "I didn't tell her anything," I said calmly. "She asked. I answered." Lena scoffed. "You could have lied." That landed harder than anything else. I looked at her, really looked this time. At the coat she'd chosen carefully, at the way she stood angled toward Evan like she was constantly performing for an invisible camera. "You wanted me to lie?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "It's called protecting family." Evan's jaw tightened. "By cutting her out of a holiday?" "That's not what happened," my mother snapped. "We just asked her to stay home this year." "For your image," Evan said. "That's enough," my father barked. "This is family business." Evan looked at him evenly. Then why does it feel like she's the only one working? Silence followed. Heavy, uncomfortable. My mother recovered quickly. She always did. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice as if intimacy might soften the blow. Rowan, we didn't come to fight, she said. We came because things need to get done. The roof is leaking again. Winter's coming fast. My stomach sank, not from surprise, but from familiarity. And Lena's hosting a holiday event for work, my father added. It's important. She needs help with expenses. Lena nodded immediately. I sent you the amount. It's not that much. I stared at her. You're asking me for money. Yes, she said, impatient now. This is separate. Separate from uninviting me? She waved a hand. Don't be dramatic. You know how this works. I did. They hadn't come to apologize. They hadn't come to explain. They'd come because something was broken, and I was the one who fixed things. Evan looked between us, disbelief settling into his features. You're serious? This doesn't concern you, my father said again. Evan ignored him. He looked at me instead. Is this normal? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Lena stepped forward, her voice rising. Can we focus? Dad already told everyone you'd handle the roof, and I really need the money by this weekend. Everyone, I repeated. She hesitated. Well, people. That was it. Not a snap. Not an explosion. A settling. Like dust finally falling after years of being kicked up. No, I said. The word felt strange in my mouth. Solid. Clean. My mother blinked. What did you say? I'm not fixing the roof, I repeated. I'm not paying for decorations. I'm not covering bills. Silence cracked. Across the porch, my father stepped closer, his face darkening. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done, I cut in, my voice still steady. You mean feeding me when I was a kid? That was parenting, not a loan, Lena scoffed. You always help. Not anymore, my mother's voice rose, sharp with disbelief. We raised you. And I'm grateful, I said, but you don't get to turn that into a lifetime contract. The wind cut through us, carrying their shock back toward me like icy breath. Evan exhaled slowly, something like relief flickering across his face. Good, he murmured. Lena rounded on him. Why are you taking her side? He didn't hesitate. Because she isn't wrong. The balance tipped hard and fast. My mother's cheeks flushed. My father's fist clenched. Lena's eyes burned with a fury I'd never seen before, because it wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at losing control. You'll regret this, my father said. I didn't feel fear. I felt boundaries. Leave, I said. They didn't move at first. Then Evan stepped back, not toward them, but toward me. It broke whatever hold they thought they still had. My parents left in a storm of indignation and slammed car doors, snow swirling in their wake. Lena didn't look back. I watched them drive off, my breath steady, my heart strangely calm. A line had been drawn, and for the first time in my life, it wasn't drawn around me, it was drawn by me. Snow started falling before dusk, thick and quiet, the kind that muffles the world instead of announcing itself. By the time Christmas Eve arrived, it had stacked itself against the garage doors in soft drifts, like it was trying to listen in. Inside, the heaters hummed steadily, strings of warm amber lights looped across the rafters, their glow reflecting off tool chests and polished concrete. The long workbench had been cleared and repurposed, covered with mismatched tablecloths, and food laid out without symmetry or pretense. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't curated. But it was full. Mr. Bennett sat near the oil heater, cane propped against his chair, telling a story about delivering mail during a blizzard so bad he had to dig his truck out 3 times in one night. The teens from the shelter crowded around him, laughing too loud, arguing about whose rolls were burned the worst. Tasha moved between tables, making sure everyone had cider, her laughter sharp and unfiltered. Little Lily ran circles around them all, clutching a cookie shaped vaguely like a star, crumbs trailing behind her like proof she'd been there. I stood back for a moment, watching. This was never something I planned. It happened the way real things usually do, slowly, quietly, without asking permission. A few extra chairs, an open door, saying yes to people who showed up without expectations. For the first time I could remember, my chest didn't feel tight. I was reaching for another cup when the garage door rattled. Once, twice, then violently. The sound cut through the room, sharp enough to make conversation stop mid-sentence. The laughter dropped away, replaced by the creak of metal and the howl of wind forcing its way inside. Before I could move, the doors flew open. Winter slammed into the garage, followed by 3 voices I knew too well: my mother, my father, Lena. Their faces were red from cold and from something darker, rage that had been simmering long enough to boil over. Snow clung to their coats, melting into dark patches on the floor like evidence. My mother pointed at me as if I'd committed a crime. "You humiliated us." Her voice echoed off the metal walls, bouncing back louder than she probably intended. "Do you know what your relatives said after you abandoned Thanksgiving?" she demanded. "After you told them lies about us?" I didn't move. My father stepped forward, jabbing a finger in my direction. "You think you're better than us now, because of this?" He gestured wildly at the garage, the lights, the people. "Your little following." Lena shoved past them, mascara streaked down her cheeks, eyes wild. "Logan left," she said, her voice cracking. "He walked out on Christmas. He said he needed space from my family, from me." She glared at me like she wanted to tear the air apart. "This is your fault." A low murmur rippled through the room. The teens stared openly. Tasha instinctively pulled Lily closer. Mr. Bennett slowly stood, his cane steady in his grip. "I didn't make him leave," I said quietly. Lena's voice shot up into a shriek. "You took him from me." "No," a voice said firmly from behind them. Every head turned. Logan stepped into view at the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders, his breath visible in the cold air. He looked calmer than he had that morning, resolved in a way that felt final. "She didn't," he said. "I left." Lena spun toward him. "Why are you here?" He met her gaze without flinching. "Because I wanted to be somewhere genuine tonight." The word landed heavy. "Your sister built something here," he continued, his voice steady, "and you never once appreciated who she is." My mother gasped like he'd struck her. "Excuse me?" Logan ignored her. He looked at me instead. "I'm sorry you've lived with this dynamic for so long." The silence pressed against the walls. Dad scoffed. "This is ridiculous. We're her family." Logan's reply was immediate. "Family doesn't treat someone like a utility," Lena snapped, her voice brittle. "You're choosing her?" He shook his head slowly. "I'm choosing decency." The room held its breath. My mother turned to me, her voice rising, desperate now. "Tell him he's wrong. Tell him you didn't pay our bills, fix our house, carry this family." I stepped behind the workbench and opened a drawer. My hands didn't shake. Inside was a brown envelope I'd prepared weeks ago, long before I admitted why. I pulled it out and held it up. "These are the payments," I said. "Everything I've covered over the years." Dad snatched it with a triumphant sneer until he unfolded the papers. Insurance, repairs, emergency fees, transfers, dates, amounts, every dollar accounted for, every favor recorded. His expression shifted. My mother's face drained of color. Lena's lips trembled. "You kept track," my mother whispered. "No," I said. "I kept boundaries. You just never noticed them until now." The garage was silent except for the soft hum of the heaters. "You're unbelievable," Dad said, his voice shaking. "We raised you." "And I owe you honesty," I replied. "Here it is. I'm done." Lena screamed, raw and unfiltered. "You ruined everything." Logan stepped between us. "Stop blaming her for your behavior." My mother lunged for the papers. "No one will believe this." I gestured around the room. "They already do." Every face watched her, not with hostility, but with clarity, with truth. Dad's voice cracked. "You'll regret this." I shook my head. "I regret letting it go on this long." I opened the garage door wider and stepped aside. "Leave." For the first time in my life, they listened. Snow swallowed their footsteps as they walked back into the night, their silhouettes fading until the storm carried them away. When the door finally closed, the silence that followed didn't hurt. It healed. I turned back to the warmth, to the people who had stayed. "Let's eat," I said. The room exhaled as one. Later, after the food was gone and laughter had settled into something softer, Logan helped Mr. Bennett to his car. Before leaving, he stopped in front of me and pressed a hand briefly to my shoulder. "You built something good," he said. "Don't let anyone take it from you." After that night, my parents went quiet, and for the first time, their silence felt like space. Space to breathe, space to grow, space to exist without explanation. A year later, I stood outside the garage watching snow drift across the lot, the lights glowing warm behind me. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I stopped chasing a seat at a table that never wanted me. I built my own, and somehow it filled itself.